Welcome back to SoulBack. This is the R&B podcast. We are recording. It's finally November, Ed. We got a lot to talk about. What's going on?
What's up, player? You know how it goes in November. These artists start finally coming out of the woodwork. We've been saying all year, nobody's dropping new music. They wait till November so they can get your Black Friday and Christmas coins. They coming for your pockets, player. We got some new stuff this week.
Yep, and Tom won't be joining us on the podcast. I think he's out at like Circuit City or Best Buy trying to collect all the Brian McKnight CDs out there. So, Tom, we miss you.
If that player's at Circuit City, he's going to be out there for a long time, searching through the rubble.
But no, Tom won't be joining us. I think he's like getting baby photos done or something like that. I think he's due in January, so he won't be joining us. But Ed, you've got us covered, right?
Listen, I've got you covered. My man's out there being a dad and not getting on my nerves, so that's a win for both of us.
There you go. But I want to first start off the podcast, Ed. I know we always talk about food, so this is nothing new. But Ed, I gotta admit it, I owe you some Popeyes.
You owe me Popeyes. Why is that?
Well, you know how I made some crazy bet a couple of weeks ago and I said, if Mariah had a number one single by the time her album came out, or even from this era, you would buy me Popeyes? Well, doesn't look like she's going to get a number one single this time around.
Doesn't look like it. However, the woman did get some wins this week. I'll give her that.
She sure did. Let's start off by talking about this Caution album that came out on Friday. Ed, I actually really like this album.
And so did I. I mean, you hit me up probably, it was sometime late last week, and you were kind of like, talking about the Timbaland tracks and some other things. And I will be honest, I was skeptical. And I was skeptical because, as we've talked about in Chronicle here on the podcast, she's had 3 or 4 singles out already. And most of the songs that leaked were either okay or I just weren't feeling at all. I did like the one single, A No No. That one I liked. Everything else was just okay. But I was pleasantly surprised by this album. It's a very tight, well done, cohesive work. And most of all, unlike a lot of artists we've been talking about this year, it feels like a classic Mariah album. But it doesn't feel old and dusty and like something from 1991. It sounds like Mariah, but it's fresh and current. And in my opinion, it's the best thing she's put out in at least 10 years.
I mean, I would agree with you on that. Because I did like the Memoirs album. I know you're not a fan of that one. But, you tweeted the album review out that you wrote up, and stands were coming for you, even though you gave it a 4 out of 5.
Let me tell you about the stands. The Lambs, they do what they do, player. I'm like, as long as you retweet it, you can curse my mama. I don't care. Just retweet it. But yeah, player, let's be honest. And you know your boy is honest. If I was honest last week or the last podcast about my man Keith and not being my favorite album that he's put out, and in fact putting out some of the worst songs I've ever heard from him, I'm going to be honest about MC. And the honest fact is, she's not terrible, but some of her work in the past 10 years has been quite inconsistent. Some of her live performances have been downright laughable. And them's the facts. That's your girl, whether or not, them's the facts. So I was just pleasantly surprised because I'm here for the music and not the memes and laughs. And what we got was a very solid album. Was it perfect? Lord, no. But what we got was some of her best working years.
Yeah, I mean, 2 points I want to make, Ed. Number one, the song with Slick Rick, Give Me Life. Dude, that song,
Player.
I mean, I tweeted and said it was like on the level of The Roof. I'm going to scale that back because that was a little bit of an exaggeration, but that
yes,
song right
it
there,
was.
Ed, I haven't heard a great Mariah song like that in years.
That's what I love about this project, player. You got a song like that. You know, I talked about how I like A No No. I love the Timbaland produced song 8th Grade. There's just lots of little gems hidden in here that's some of the best stuff I've heard from her in a long time. I'm not talking about, I'm a Mariah stan, so I'm going to pretend everything she does is flawless, and if you don't get that, then you suck. Just as a critic and a fan of her music from 1991 or 2, I'm not talking about somebody that came in the game the Mimi era. I'm talking about the Music Box Mariah Vision of Love era. I've been through the whole roller coaster. And some of this stuff, that ballad portrait, that reminds me of vintage Mariah. It really feels like a complete look at her career going way back then. And again, it measures up to even some of her best stuff. That's why I love it. Love that Slick Rick joint.
And shout out to Ty Dolla $ign for continuing the streak of appearing on R&B albums. I think he's been on every single album this year. So shout outs to Ty.
If we must. He didn't ruin the song, so I'll give him props for that. That's as much as I'll give him. He didn't ruin something this time.
And I've noticed Ty Dolla $ign likes to use the Cassie "Ooh Yeah" on a lot of his songs. So he might be like the next member of Jodeci.
First of all, wash your mouth out with soap. How dare you? Secondly, yes, he does love his "Ooh Yeah."
Yep. And then with the album, the one thing I will say though, Ed, because I've seen some complaints about it, is that they didn't feel like Mariah was singing on the album. But I felt like with the production in place, she didn't necessarily have to do that. I mean, a lot of Mariah fans, they want to hear that, that voice. But I mean, realistically, at this point in her career, she did what she could. And I can't be mad at that. It would be better that she did this than if she tried to force something out that just wasn't there.
That's the thing, Playa. It's all about knowing what you can do. Like, we didn't hear any of the crazy octaves on this album. And that's cool, because what we heard was good. My argument with your girl Ashanti and especially some newer artists, not just her, is they overextend their range. Like, do what you do and do it well. Everybody can't be Whitney. So don't try, because if you do, I'm going to crack on you when I do your review. So no, just stay in your lane and then things will work out fine. So no, we didn't hear the crazy notes of the past, but she did what she did and she did it so well.
Yeah, and shout outs to Gunna. He's appeared on two of my favorite artists' projects this year. So he was on the Usher album and now he's on the Mariah one. So he's an artist to look out for, right, Ed?
Every time I look out for him, I deduct a star from my album review. So, yeah, I'm looking for him.
Come on. But, Ed, it's really cool because along with this album, which will probably do fairly well on the charts, she was actually number one on iTunes last week with Glitter. That album came out in like 2001. Not exactly critically acclaimed, although I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. But that was number one. They had this whole Justice for Mariah Justice for Glitter actually movement that the Lambs started, and number one on iTunes. That's kind of cool.
Playa, that's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Even Mariah seemed confused when I saw the initial tweet from her. She's kind of like, I don't know what's going on, but Justice for Glitter, and everybody started hyping up Glitter and pretending that Glitter was this great album. Playa, Glitter was not great. It wasn't a travesty. The movie, that's another discussion. But it is probably my least favorite Mariah album. It's not horrific, but it's not great. Anyway, I don't know where this surge of sales came from, but I will tell you this. I hope you Lambs keep the same energy for this Caution album, because while you're putting in all your coins for that, you better save some for this new one so you can keep her career up and vibrant. That's all I'm trying to say.
Can we give some justice for some of your other, albums that came out that people don't really know about? I know you love that 702 debut. Do we need a justice for that 702 debut album, Ed?
Yes, we do. Justice for 702's No Doubt album. Justice for No Doubt.
Man. And then the last thing I'll say about this whole Mariah release and just this whole movement that's going on, she's received so much positive press this time around, because normally during album release time, performance, and tour time, she's getting killed by the media. So I mean, I got to give a shout out to Mariah's team for kind of rebranding her in a way to where people just look at her as a legend, as she should be. I mean, she just got nominated for the Songwriters Hall of Fame as well. So I think it's time that we give her some props.
Well, see, here's the thing, Playa. Here comes rant time. If you got beef with it, the Lambs will know where to find me. It's E.T. Bowser on Twitter. Listen, it kind of goes back to this, and you're in Canada, so thankfully you don't have to deal with this. But this whole ridiculous fake news, the media is evil movement. And the narrative has been, oh, the media is so against Mariah, they're so unfair, they're so this and that. No, most of the time, in this case, the media was telling the truth. She had some terrible live performances. She had some mediocre albums. She had some sloppy singles. And this time, we get good music. We get good performances. We get viable stuff that proves that she's a legend. Player, you don't get no props from me because of what you did back in the day. You get props on what you have done in the present. And this album proves that her legacy is strong. So that's why I think you're seeing so much positive stuff. Not just because, I mean, of course, you got some weirdos that's jumping on the train, but she has put out some of the best work and we've seen from her in years. She seems vibrant, she seems happy, she seems focused, and I think that's being rewarded with the critics. But in the past, they were hard on her because she was putting out some old bull. So you stay off the bull, you stay off my bad list. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. So, along with Mariah, Ed, Sade, your girl Sade, dropped a new single. Song is off the Widows film, The Big Unknown. I think you heard it while you were watching the film.
But yeah, we were talking about this before we hit record, and it was weird because we watched Widows. I went with my wife. She was very excited for this movie, so we saw it last night. And the movie is awesome, by the way. There been few movies that I sat in where the crowd was freaking out like they were. No spoilers, but y'all got to see it and make sure you don't read the spoilers first because that movie's wild. But when the credits rolled, they started playing this Sade song. And I was like, I don't know this song. Is this new? Is this like some album cut that I don't remember? But it's Sade. Sade never disappoints. And from what I heard, you know, as I was like gathering up my popcorn and junk as I was leaving the theater, I really liked what I heard. So I need to go and check out the full version. But if you haven't heard it, go check out The Big Unknown.
Yep. And Ed, Brandy is back with a new single as well, off the Star, you know, the TV show that's going on, All I Need. I know you really like the song. And Ed, I'll be honest with you. Those songs that come out of Empire, that come out of Star, that come out of Power, I don't really have a lot of faith in those songs, and I think they're just like B material, but this one was alright.
Yeah, most of those songs that come out, especially on Empire, I'm like seasons behind on Power, and Star, I couldn't get through but one episode of that show. Ugh. But most of the songs that come out are just kind of generic poppy songs. I always call them the American Idol songs because they sound like joints that the dudes on American Idol would randomly sing. But this song sounds like a Brandy song. It's the kind of song that I really want from her at this point in her career because it sounds very mature, takes great advantage of her voice, which is still top notch. It's very good. And again, if this is the type of material that we hear from her whenever we get her next body of work, I'm down for it because this one was a keeper.
Yeah, and it's crazy. It's actually been 6 years since the release of her last album, 211, and normally she takes that 4-year hiatus, and I think back in the day, I really felt that 4 years, like it was a long period, but 6 years have flown by, and like I don't even notice it. Is it just us growing up, or is it just there's so much music that we forget? Like, what's going on here?
It's actually both. It's us growing up and getting just like sidetracked by other things that's going on in life with careers and girlfriends, and Tom's having babies. Well, he's not having babies, but his wife is. And that's going on. And then the second thing is I've been talking about earlier over on the Soul and Stereo Cypher on Facebook. Go join that if you haven't caught up there. Is music. We're just getting so many album releases at one time. I feel like every Friday there's like 4 or 5 new releases. And we're getting bombarded constantly with so much new music that we're distracted. And it's not the gaps that we're used to seeing. Of course, the downfall of that is I feel like music doesn't have time to stick and resonate with us like they used to. So it's easy, like you have to drop something incredible for it to really sit on our consciousness because there's so much, it's easy for it to be disposable. But I'm not surprised really that we've kind of, I wouldn't say we've forgotten about Brandy because we'll never forget about her, but it's easier for her not to be at top of mind when there's just so much other stuff going on.
Yep. Shout outs to Brandy. We're expecting that new album soon. I know she's been in the lab with DJ Camper, so that should be exciting. Ed, I've got some new music news to announce to you and the people. 112, or at least half of it, Mike and Slim are set to release a new album called Tonight. It's gonna be kind of weird without Duran and Q in the mix. Are you excited about this at all, Ed?
I want to be. You know, I christen myself a 112 stan. Are they even calling themselves 112? Or do they have some goofy name like 11 or something?
I'm not sure.
I want it to sound like a 112 project. Who knows what it'll sound like? I'm always excited with new music from any of the four guys, so I'll be checking it out. Not sure I would say I'm excited, though. Well, I guess curious is a better word.
Well, at least one group is still putting out music because TGT, Tyrese, Genuine, and Tank. Ed, I know you really like them. We all thought Three Kings was the greatest R&B album of all time.
I don't know who we is, but go ahead.
Well, most recently, Tank randomly for some, I guess he was reflecting, he was sad that he let R&B down with the breakup of TGT, and he felt like they were supposed to bring R&B back, save it, open up the budgets for R&B acts on major labels, just bring the love and the interest back into the genre. They broke up after, I guess, one album, and he takes blame for that. And then your boy Tyrese comes in and says, you know what, let's quit all the beef and let's go on tour. I'm ready to do this. And then Genuine comes in and says, nope. So, first of all, who decided that TGT was going to be the one to save R&B? I think that was like self-proclaimed.
I can guarantee you that was self-proclaimed because I don't remember ever saying that. If somebody got that, bring me the receipts because I never remember saying that one.
But realistically, would you even want to see another TGT reunion or project?
I wouldn't say that I'm against it, but please, I'm not sitting around holding my breath for it, nor am I losing any sleep over it. The TGT project, I feel like they hyped up so much that there's no way it could have met expectations. What we got was fine. It was solid. I still play a couple songs from it. But they just hyped it up so much because in their head, and I understand it, because R&B was at a point where there was kind of a vacuum. There was no clear leader. So here you got three veterans, proven artists that have done their thing in the past. We're going to step up and we're going to do it. And then they tried it, and even they couldn't do it because the landscape is different. And then they imploded and fighting and backbiting, and Genuine probably is the smartest one of the bunch. Is like, I ain't here for y'all bickering. I'm out. So I can't blame them for that. But I would like to hear new music from them if they all got on that same page because we're talking about three talented artists who with a proven track record. If we're going to get a whole bunch of win-wees and stuff, you can keep that so I can save my hard drive from sending it to the recycle bin. Keep that to yourself. But if they want to come together and really, truly, quote-unquote, save R&B, I ain't mad at it. Do what you do. But your boy ain't over here losing sleep. Trust.
I'm not going to lie, Ed. I'm kind of afraid every time Tank puts out a new record. First we had When We, which, you know, it grew on me in the end, but it's not really what I want to hear from Tank. And then, of course, we have the record with him, Teddy Riley, and Case, which it didn't even sound like Tank on the song. And then I have to remind you on this, Ed. He was on a song with Teddy Riley and your boy Keith Sweat, Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo. So Tank's track record, pretty much ever since Sex, Love, and Pain, it's been a little shaky. So I don't know if I don't really need it. I don't need another TGT album.
First of all, let's get it straight. The song that he was on was not Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo. Because that song was horrific. Although the song he was on wasn't that great.
Who's your
dad?
But
secondly, yes, it was the second worst song. It wasn't the worst song. So Tank upgraded it from the bottom. But my point is this. I'm like you. I'm a little paranoid about anytime I see featuring Tank at this point. Or even a Tank track solo. Because of what we've seen. But again, it's weird because we're in this abusive relationship with these R&B artists, player. It's just like me and an abusive wife because you remember the good times. You remember when it was cool. You remember when you got all the good happy times. But then we got to deal with the BS and then just like, I know I'm being abused, but maybe tomorrow it'll be better. and it's never better.
Nope, it isn't. I've got some more stuff for you to rant about, Ed, before we get into, your Boyz II Men discography.
Yes.
T-Pain, your arch nemesis T-Pain.
Oh, God.
Shoutouts to Daniel Bamber. That's our boy. We love you, Daniel.
I love Daniel.
T-Pain.
I don't love Teddy Payne.
Well, first of all, Ed, T-Pain caused quite the controversy on social media. He said that Aaliyah's death overhyped her legacy. I just want to make a quick note that bit of that interview was actually from 2015. It just somehow made its way back onto Twitter 3 years later. But, I mean, Ed, this is all yours because you wrote about it too. I'm going to say that T-Pain isn't necessarily all the way wrong in what he was trying to imply, but obviously, with the internet and everything being clickbait, you could have gotten it misconstrued. But what was your whole write-up about?
Yeah, and for those who haven't seen it, just roll by soulandstereo.com so you can get the full version because, we'll just break it down here for the podcast. Like you mentioned, I don't know why the internet fights about stuff like that happens and nobody does their research. But when I was writing the piece, I went and actually found the original tweet where this controversy originated from. And I saw it was freaking 2015. So this is a very old discussion that somehow came back into the public's consciousness. However, if you read the whole interview from T-Pain, it's not as bad as the kind of pullout quote says. And the pullout, the kind of in general, what he was trying to say is that Aaliyah has gotten to the point where no one can say, if you say anything bad about her, you're going to be flamed and destroyed. And that if you levy any criticism against them, you're an evil Satanist. And right now, no one can ever touch her because she's this untouchable thing. So I actually agree with some of that. Because it is true. We've talked about stan culture. We talked about the lambs earlier. They're going to light up my mentions again for that. But truth is true. But the point is, a lot of times in this internet culture, it's weird. We have this place where we feel like we have to defend the artists we love, like just unconditionally. We cannot say that they've ever done anything wrong, or they ever had any slight, or they've ever had any short step. No, they're perfect, and everything they do is 5 stars. And if you don't believe it, you're an idiot. And that's how Aaliyah fans have gotten, because honestly, she's not here to defend herself, so they hold her up as a pariah. That's kind of natural. However, T-Pain, that piece of garbage, to say that anybody is ever overrated, he needs to keep his robo mouth shut because he is not the one to speak on that. Because if you look at Aaliyah's legacy, I don't know if I would call her a legend. That's a stretch. But we cannot discount her track record. Look at what she's done. She, number one, succeeded at a time where the R&B marketplace was extremely crowded. We talking mid-90s. A lot of these artists y'all on now, they wouldn't get a blip on the radar if they were around in the mid-90s because it was just legendary track after legendary track after legendary track. For you to make your name, you had to be top flight. And she was able to do that with her first album. Second album, as we all know, history making because it linked her up for the first time with Timbaland and Missy. Now we underestimate their influence now because we've had 20 years to kind of get used to the Timbaland sound. But Playa, I was here when 1 in a Million dropped for the first time. I remember everybody's mind being blown by that beat. It was like something from outer space because R&B, that sound of production didn't exist. Like nothing sounded like that. We're used to the bleeps and bloops and crickets and stuff now. But back then, that was like literally inventing a new category of music. She helped change that. So yes, that alone gives her pass for status of like top shelf. I mean, of course, we gotta give credit for Timbaland and Missy too because they helped push that. But that team together was unbeatable. And when you look at how that sound has influenced pretty much all the music you hear now, all this atmospheric and moody and sonically, whatever stupid name you want to put on it, R&B noir. All of that kind of just is born from that sound from that 1 in a Million album. So again, that is something, when people ask me what's a classic is something that defines a generation and influences the next generation. Playa, that's that album. And then the third album is kind of tricky to even talk about because she passed so soon after it was released. But again, of course, most of its steam came from after she died. Unfortunately, whenever an artist passes, that album kind of pulls a glitter on iTunes and just flies to the top of the charts because fans want to support, and that's part of that. So it's kind of hard to weigh that legacy. But even if you don't count that, and you just count the 1 in a Million album and count where she was headed as far as getting into Hollywood and stuff, that woman's legacy is far cry above most other artists in the game right now and most artists in history. She ain't got the best vocals. She don't have the deepest catalog. She wasn't here as long as we wanted her to be. But she has a legacy that you cannot question. Shut up, T-Pain.
But, Ed, I will say one thing, and this is going to piss a lot of people off. So send all your hate messages to @ETBowser.
Yes.
We talk about her being in Hollywood, and this might sound disrespectful, but it's the truth because I actually watched the movie. Queen of the Damned, Ed, that was a horrible movie. I'm just going to put it out there.
Oh, the movie trash.
That was trash. So
I will be the first to admit it's trash.
Yeah, so I'm not sure where this notion that she would have been this huge Hollywood star would have where that came from. It may have happened, but then if all we have is Queen of the Damned to judge her by, I don't know about that, Ed. I don't know.
Well, see, here's the thing, Playa. That was one movie where and not only was her performance not good, it was not a good movie. So it's hard to say that. She was better in Romeo Must Die. Again, she wasn't the best thing in the world. At the end of the day, she was not a great actor. But, I mean, is Keanu Reeves a great actor? He's had decent parts, but people still see him as a megastar. Is T-Pain a good singer? Good God, no. But y'all stay in my mentions talking about how legendary he is. So you can't really judge talent by legendary status. She could have been a big star. Maybe she would have got better. Maybe she would have got worse. We can't really say. But the thing is that we can talk about is the trajectory. And seeing that she was about to be part of those Matrix movies. Now, we know that those last two movies end up being straight garbage. But in the 2000s, that was a really big deal. And her being part of that was going to be a launching pad for her. I think that she would have, and I've said this on record before, and stands are going to be in my mentions for this. I think that if she had continued on her path unabated, she probably would have been to where Rihanna is now. She would be this crossover pop star who does fashion stuff, is in movies, and can kind of do a lot of things. And I do think that probably by now she probably would have backed off the music thing a little bit, like pretty much everybody else of her generation. Because we forget that we kind of lump her into the younger generation. She's a 90s artist. So even though she's young, she'd have been probably 39 or 40 by now. She probably would be slowing down. But I don't think that when people say, oh, there would be no Beyonce. Yes, there would be Beyonce. Chill out. She was no Beyonce. But yeah. I think that she would have gotten to a Rihanna status where she's revered for many facets of her career. Acting probably would have still been struggling, but I still think she would have been a force.
Speaking of Beyonce, since we're calling people out, she did not do a good job in that Austin Powers movie either.
Oh, of course not. I mean, Beyonce is a horrible actress. She bad as Aaliyah. She's horrible.
Yeah. But that's enough slandering. Shoutouts to Beyonce, shoutouts to Aaliyah, even shoutouts to T-Pain.
No, I ain't shouting out to him.
Can we give a quick shout out, Ed, before we get into these Playa Please Awards? I know we got this Boyz II Men. I want to dedicate some time to that at the end, but let's get these Playa Pleases out of the way first, Ed.
Let's do it.
Well, I want to give a positive award because not everything is hate around here. So We got to give a quick shout out to Spectacular from Pretty Ricky, Ed.
Why on earth do we have to do that?
Ed, he is enrolled in Harvard now. He's a business student at Harvard.
Spectacular is in Harvard? I had not heard this.
Yeah. So, big ups to Spectacular. He has his company that's like multi-million-dollar worth now, and he's in Harvard, so shout outs to Spec.
What kind of company is he got? Is something like some baby oil ab rubbing stuff? Is that what he's selling? What is he doing?
No. You know how like you like artists' pages on like Facebook, and then they have all those like clickbait posts like you won't believe what so and so said.
Yeah.
Yeah, he runs that thing. So like if you click on the link, Spectacular makes money.
Really? That's actually a pretty brilliant strategy for any kind of entrepreneur these days. Good for him. So, I mean, he still kind of sucks, but good for him.
You won't be watching his underwear dancing videos?
My God, no.
All right. Ed, are you ready for the Playa Please Awards then?
Yes, let's do it.
This is one that I actually wanted to bring up a couple of weeks ago when Usher dropped his A album with Zaytoven. But there were reports allegedly that Usher had a burner account. Now, for those that don't know what a burner account is, it's someone that creates a fake account or a secret account to defend, whoever. So there was this mysterious account that kept defending Usher for everything that he was doing, whether it was the release of the A album to, his herpes allegations. And people believe that it was actually Usher behind that account. There's no confirmation on it, Ed, so we can't give Usher the full award. But imagine if it was Usher and he was out there defending himself.
Well, last I heard about this mysterious burner account is that it wasn't Usher and that he had paid somebody to do it. Of course, this is all speculation. We don't know. Tom is the guy who speculates, a.k.a. makes up random stuff. But as far as I know, either this is just all BS or there was someone else running it. I just wish someone would make a burner Soul and Stereo account. So when I get yelled at by the Beehive and the Lambs and Nicki Minaj minions, whatever you call them, someone can be like, nope, you're wrong. Nope, he knows what he's talking about. I guess I got to get higher up in the tax bracket or I can charge somebody to do that. Barry, he's not doing anything. Shout out Barry Bars. I'll get him to be my burner.
Well, either that or you can hit up Spectacular for rates.
Oh, gosh, no. Because it's going to come with a tube of baby oil. I ain't down with it, player.
The next Playa Please Award, we're going to give it to the Queen of R&B, Cassie. It was dubbed by Vogue Italiano, I think it was a couple of years ago.
Yes,
so, Ed,
I forgot all about that.
So, Ed, as you know, because it was all over the internet, Cassie and Diddy finally broke up for good after 9 or 10 years together. I think maybe even 11. So, Ed, I was very excited. I'm like, yep, the Queen of R&B is back. Because if you think about it, Cassie hasn't released an album since her debut. And I know you're no fan of Cassie, but she has a couple of smooth records. So I was ready for a new Cassie project. She was teasing it on Instagram, saying, I'm back in the lab, I'm making music. Well, Ed, bad news, she's back with Diddy.
Oh my gosh, I had not heard this. I thought that Diddy, the last I saw of this, Diddy had dumped Cassie for some other girl that looked like she was a smooth 16 years old. And the internet was all pissed off about it because they're like, oh, he left Cassie out to dry. Cassie is a grown woman who has an album, who has singles. For God knows why y'all are buying them, but for some reason you are. Cassie, I'm sure, has enough to stand on financially. She doesn't need Puffy to hold her hand. That was her boyfriend, not her daddy. And if she doesn't, shame on her. So if they're back together, good for them. Anything that keeps her out of the studio and occupied is cool with me. But I will say, since we're on the subject of Puff, we do want to keep the family of Kim Porter in mind, who passed a little bit before recording this podcast. most of my 90s folks know that back in the day, Puffy and Kim Porter were like the Jay and Beyonce of their day. They were the power couple. And she is I think she just had twins. She just had young children. So, and she is the mother of Puff's kids. So, very sad passing. She was like 46 years old, something like that. So, man, you never know. You never know.
Yeah. Well, on a quick note, Cassie and Diddy are allegedly back together. We're not a gossip site, so we don't really know. But yeah, Ed, Kim Porter received a lot of love on Instagram from a lot of different artists. So, R.I.P. to her. Let's get into some more Playa Please Awards. This one comes from, Jill Scott.
Oh, yes.
Ed, have you ever given oral sex to a mic? Because that's what she was doing. That was a problem.
I have not in my lifetime had the opportunity to give the sloppy to a microphone. I'm sorry. I have not crossed that off of my list.
Where does this rank? And we have the other one. We have R. Kelly. You've seen that video, right? Where the fans were wiping him down, face, cheek, tongue, everywhere.
First of all, let's break this down into two. Because I saw the internet going ballistic about Jill Scott and saying, oh, I can't believe it. Well, obviously, you have never listened to a Jill Scott song in your life. All these R&B fans out here, I question, player, your validity if you think that Jill Scott is some pristine choir robe lady. Them vocals might come out the choir, but that mouth is straight out the hood. And she stays on her nasty. I mean, that's just her. So her doing that to anybody who really knows Jill Scott isn't a shock. So Jill just doing what Jill does, and Twitter just proving that these R&B fans don't really listen to R&B. Same old there. Now, Robert Kelly, the Pied Piper of R&B, up to his old filthy tricks again. I don't know if y'all seen this video, but he's literally like, wipe me down, and these random hands and women screaming, like just wiping them. Then he's like, and wipe my tongue, and they're wiping. It's the grossest thing ever. It doesn't help that it looks like they're in the back of a shed somewhere. I'm not even sure if that was a stage. And you don't even see these women's faces. You just see these old lady hands. It is the weirdest thing ever. Why does R. Kelly still exist is what I'm trying to figure out. Y'all really like them songs that much? I mean, I love You Remind Me of My Jeep. But if a man commands me to wipe his tongue, I'm going to find better things to do with my Saturday afternoon.
So, Ed, I'm going to need the names of all the people that were wiping down R. Kelly's tongue, and we need to put them in the Playa Please Hall of Fame, because that, my friend Ed, that is the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
That is up there with, and when it's almost time for the annual Playa Please Awards, where we really shout out the 10 worst. That's got to be high on the list, because that was the grossest, weirdest thing I have seen in 2018. And that says a lot when it's a year with Kanye hugging Trump every 5 seconds.
Yeah, I just feel like, because obviously we had Casey riding on his bodyguard's shoulders earlier in the year, eating chicken nuggets, but this one might take the cake. I'm sorry, Ed.
That's up there, and I do not understand these R. Kelly apologists. Again, I feel like that's been the moral of this podcast. Y'all can like who you like. You can like the songs you don't, but please admit when your fave is a weirdo, a gross, molesting creep. Kelly is a weirdo, and if you love I Believe I Can Fly that much and you want to step in the name of love that hard, do it. But at least be real with yourself. The man's disgusting.
Yep. So, Ed, let's get into this Boyz II Men discography. You ranked the albums from worst to best. You even included the cover albums, which I thought was pretty cool. Give me what you got, because let me tell you, Ed, as you know, I like Boyz II Men, but I don't love Boyz II Men like the rest of you guys. I'm still going to go on record to say that their second album is not a 5-star album. I know I just pissed off a lot of people, so again, send it to E.T. Bowser. But I want to hear your rankings, because I felt like you were a little generous with these rankings.
I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did. And here's the reason why. And I even addressed this in the post. I understand why this current generation is just not on Boyz II Men because of several factors. Number one, the main lineup broke up quietly. A lot of people don't even know that there's not the quartet anymore. They haven't been a quartet since like '02. So the main lineup has fallen out of the spotlight. So there are really like two generations of R&B fans who don't really know of Boyz II Men because they really haven't done anything huge since like '01 or 2000. So it's been a long, long time. Number two, their sound, while to me one of the most influential, when we talk about the 90s being the biggest boom period financially and commercially for R&B, they were at the top of the charts during that period. They were R&B. But when it comes to their sound, the sound of Jodeci and the style they influenced, that became the bigger sound as far as lasting power. And you saw a lot more artists who were influenced by Jodeci go on to have big careers. And really that's because as hip hop became bigger and bigger in the late 90s and 2000s, that sound was easier to translate than Boyz II Men, which was more soul and pop. That didn't have the edge that the 112s and Dru Hills and all those guys had because they were straight out of the Jodeci mold. So it was easy for them to navigate. So it's easier to hear a Jagged Edge and say, oh, that sounds like Dru Hill. That sounds like Jodeci, and that way Jodeci feels more like a pioneer. And then thirdly, of course, in this era where I can hang out with my youth group and they're all doing the New Editions dance, and that's because of the the BT movies. They are in the spotlight. They've had multiple movies. Ain't nobody done a movie on Boyz II Men. So again, although they are one of the most influential groups of all time, in 2018 that influence just isn't recognized because they just aren't there. That don't mean them brothers ain't dope though. So we'll run through real quick what I have for the rankings, and then we'll talk about them, and you can see the full list, of course, at soulandstereo.com. The end of the list, of course, their 2014 album, Collide. That wasn't the best album, dog, because it was a mishmash of sounds. They were really trying to find themselves, and it ain't work out too well. So I think most Boyz II Men fans know that one didn't do too well. Yeah. After that, it's just Ed,
I gotta make a point about Collide. I'm pretty sure Mike, the bass singer, was rolling over when he heard that album. Because that was a bad album.
Playa. First of all, Mike ain't dead. Secondly, yes, that album. And the thing is, it has a couple great songs on it, but it just doesn't stand up because it's so all over the place.
Yeah.
Looking back at the rest of the list, I'm just going to fly through it a little bit. I won't go into too much detail. We've got the cover albums. A lot of people don't know that for the past pretty much decade, these dudes have been pumping out album after album after album of covers. And most of those all fall into kind of the same category. They're okay. The problem with a cover album is that when you hear them, your mind automatically goes back to the original song. So unless you completely surpass the first song, it's always going to feel inferior, no matter what you do. Like, there's, when it comes to something like Ribbon in the Sky, who's going to beat Stevie? Actually, Intro did a really good cover. But other than that, you're going to be like, man, I want to hear the Stevie song. I don't necessarily want to hear the Boyz II Men version, but it's okay. And that's the issue with cover albums. Most of them, the 2009 album Love, Motown, A Journey Through Hitsville, USA, Under the Streetlight, Throwback. A lot of those albums are okay. To me, Throwback was probably the best of the covers, but they're all just fine. Then in '06, they had an album that was exclusively released in Japan, The Remedy. Again, that's another album that was just okay. Then when we start getting to the top 5 and 6, these are the albums that most people remember. I had at number 6, Full Circle. That was the last album that had all four of the guys together. Now, I know a lot of fans really love this album. Shout out my man Gustav on the Soul and Stereo Cypher. He loves this joint and was pissed off that it was number 6. And I didn't give it 5 stars. But, it's okay. Nothing great. I'm probably with you on this one, Kyle, since you think that everything is from them is just okay. It's fine. The 2000 album, Nathan Michael Sean Wanye, I really like this one. And this is probably one of the more underrated ones, along with 2011's 20. Those two, to me, are the two Boyz II Men albums that don't get talked about enough, that are very, very good for what they are. And then the top 3. Now, these are the 3 that I think are by far the best. And Kyle didn't care because, there's no Timberland bangers on them. But here we are. Number 3, Evolution, the 97 album. That's the one with the Mama song on it that's played out. I know the Mama song is played out, but the overall album is spectacular. Number 2, of course, Kool-Aid High Harmony. Another one of those albums that I don't think we talk about enough on the podcast. We talk a lot about New Jack Swing and how around the early 90s people were just getting sick of it, kind of like we're dealing with trap right now. That was one of the albums that kind of took the New Jack Swing sound and started doing some different things with it and proved that people were ready for something different. And that's why they stood out, because they used that doo-wop sound and were able to transition it. And I think that's why that one stood so high above the rest. And of course, number 1, no question, is the second album too. The one that, for whatever reason, Kyle doesn't think is that great. The only argument I feel like you can have against this album is that so many of the songs are so iconic that they're kind of played out now. At this point, everybody knows the big song. So when you're hearing this, kind of like, I don't want to hear this song. I've heard it 100 times at my school talent show. Regardless, it's a great piece of work. May be the best album of the 90s.
Wow. And that's all I've got to say about that, Ed. Wow.
What would you say? The show, the party, the after party, the hotel is the best of the 90s?
Well, actually, the second half of that album is like 6 stars.
Oh, it's pretty good, but it ain't better than this.
Well, let me just say that everyone these days thinks that Jodeci was bigger than Boyz II Men, even though, if you ask my mom, who was like a flat-out pop R&B listener, who was the bigger artist, she'll tell you right away that Boyz II Men was infinitely bigger than Jodeci. But Ed, I'm a revisionist, and I'm going to say Jodeci was massive. Way bigger than Boyz II Men.
Oh my gosh. Well, you at least listen to the people who were alive during that time. Your mom knows, as we've chronicled before, your mom knows what's up. I don't know why that knowledge wasn't passed to her baby boy, but she knows what's up.
Actually, it's kind of interesting. This whole generation thinks that Jodeci was bigger, and you kind of pointed it out earlier, but it is kind of interesting just to see how that all has panned out.
I mean, yeah, and there's the whole thing about history being written by the winners. And the fact of the matter is, Jodeci, while we got members of Jodeci riding around on men like camels eating chicken, they're still, their legacy as far as influencing current music is just so much bigger than Boyz II Men's right now that it's easy to say that they were the bigger group because they're the group that's a little bit more remembered. But I guarantee you, if in 2019 BT decided to have a Boyz II Men miniseries, that by the end of 2019 everybody be screaming that they're the greatest thing of all time. We saw the same thing with the Straight Outta Compton movie, where suddenly, all of a sudden, everybody was like NWA was the greatest ever. And a year before, they were like, who is DJ Yolo? So it's the masses are easily influenced.
Mm-hmm. So Ed, it's time for the SoulBack track of the day. Everyone, if you haven't had a chance, the website Genius did an interview with Mariah. It was like an hour long, and it went through like her writing process, her creative process. I thought that was a very good interview, almost something that we would have done on the website, but so the one thing that she did mention was her favorite song, period, Mariah Carey, her favorite song is The Roof. So we're going to make that the SoulBack track of the day.
Man, look at that. It's funny that her favorite song is one of my favorite songs. And that is we talked about in my review how on her song A No No that she's able to take a hip hop sample, flip it, and just make it her own. And that is the number one song that she flipped when she took that Mobb Deep joint and flipped it. Of all those hip hop influenced samples that she's got, that one is probably the best one. One of my favorite Mariah songs ever. I'm with my girl on that one.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing because Shook Ones is like, that's a song that you like, you're ready to fight people when you listen to that song.
Yes, but she turned it into the smoothest thing ever.
Yeah, that's a legend right there, Ed. So that seems to be it for this week's podcast. What's going on with SoulInStereo.com before we get out of here?
Man, player, there is so much going on. As we talked about in the last podcast, for the month of November, we do what's called Blog Like Crazy. If you've seen any of my posts, you'll see that hashtag. And that's part of a writing initiative that was started by my wife. And she's encouraging bloggers to at least write one post a day. So that means Soul and Stereo has new content up every single day. So it is a ton of new stuff if you haven't checked it out. So we already mentioned the album review from Mariah. Today I posted one from Anderson .Paak, his new album, one of the better ones of the year. We've got a review from Action Bronson. Of course, new love letters, 2 or 3 new editions of the love letters. We talked about the T-Pain article with Aaliyah. Go see me rant and rave about that. We also talked about the Boyz II Men rankings. We did that. We saw in the past week this passing of comic legend Stan Lee. So I had an article ranking the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe from top to bottom. I talked about 5 R&B albums you may have missed this year, giving some love to some artists I didn't have time to review, but you need to listen to. I've got a rap version coming out this week, and just tons and tons and tons of content. Y'all are working me into the ground, but I'm loving it.
Sounds like you're busy. And then as far as you know, I got Soul. Actually, Tom just told me, so our boy Zeppelin, he's been partnering up with us for this Millennials in Music segment. And he actually just got an interview with Tone Stith, who's one of our favorite new R&B artists, someone to look forward to. So we'll probably get that posted on the site too. We just posted our interview with Keith Sweat. And, you know, you got a lot of love for that one. So we got to shout out the fans for showing you all that love. You really held it down there. I mean, it felt like Keith was like in sleep mode, but you held it down. So I got to give you props for that.
Appreciate that, player. Yeah, Keith's my man, but he didn't seem entirely conscious. He pulled it out near the end, but he was in and out of consciousness, it sounded like, for the first half of that. But it's all good. I keep telling y'all, I do this for real, for real. I'm not one of these internet dudes, so just another day at the office for your boy. But I appreciate all the love I got for that one.
Yep, absolutely. And, you know, a quick shout out before we get out of here to our girl, Lachelle Wallace. We haven't heard from her in a minute. I actually spoke to her yesterday, Ed. So she's still listening to the podcast. She's still watching the interviews. She's just taking a step back because she doesn't want to fight with the fans anymore on the internets. So shout outs to you, Lachelle.
I can't blame her for that. Shout out to my girl, but yes, fighting with the fans is tiring. But hey, somebody's got to set them straight. I'm looking at my mentions now, and they're mad again. Ugh.
The Lamley's gonna come for you.
They still coming for me, dog.
Mm-hmm. All right, Ed. I think that's it for this week's podcast. We're cutting close to December, so you got to get ready for that end year countdown, album of the year. You got to go through all of that. So you're gonna have to get ready for that. I'm gonna have to get ready for that. And Tom, hopefully he shows up. But until then, Ed, we are out of here.
We out. See you later. 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 We out.